When I say war, I think there's a tariff war. Obviously, this is a tariff war that could degenerate into other things that we are navigating a lot of I don't knows.
Arielle Kayabaga, am I saying it right?
Yeah, you
Arielle,
said it
okay.
perfect.
You're at home. I'm at home. I don't know if you can hear my dog barking outside. So
Oh, okay.
we're catching up on a missed opportunity because I was supposed to interview you at the Munich Security Conference. But
hmm
it may be good that we had a chance to wait because maybe you can tell me about how you're doing on Tuesday, March 4th. US President
Yeah.
Donald Trump just announced that he's turning up the tariffs. What does that mean to
hmm
you?
Um, Not good. I am a member of Parliament for London West. London West is in the southwestern Ontario corridor, where our strongest economy is based on manufacturing, based on the automotive sector, and the industrial. So we're known for automotive, and that is the most impacted sector, if you can imagine. I think one thing that people need to know is that 78% of small businesses in Canada trade and they export to the US and other markets. And of course, in the last couple of years, people have grown and we've looked at new opportunities to market. But our strongest collaborator on that has been the United States of America, and not just for the benefit of Canadians, but for the benefit of Americans as well. We have Americans who work in Canada. We have Canadians who work in America, especially on our border, on our side of the border, because Detroit is just 2 hours away from where I live, and you look at the Windsor corridor, which is the southwestern region. Lots of people live and work between those two borders. So this is not good. It's creating an unwarranted, unjustified, unnecessary war between Americans and Canadians. And um, uh, the current administration is telling us that they do not care about Canada, despite that we were there for them when they went to Afghanistan. We were there for them in World War II. We have been allies. We were there for them when they had fires in different cities in the United States of America. We were there for them 9/11. We were there for them when they couldn't land any planes and Americans needed a place to be. Our communities were up at arms with the United States of America. We see the U.S. as an extension of, who we are. They're like siblings to countries that have had the greatest relationship in the world. And now we are at loss at what is happening. We don't understand it. It's unjustified. It is unwarranted. And it leaves us, not just us, but it leaves Americans vulnerable as well. And we, as Canadians, are hoping that this can be walked back. The damage has already been done. We're seeing loss of jobs. And as I said, the automotive sector will be impacted immediately. There'll be closures immediately. And so when you attack your neighbor's economy, you're declaring war on them, and it's just very unfortunate.
You've used the word war twice, and I'm surprised at that. Is that on purpose? Do you feel like it's that big of an attack?
It is because our economy is being attacked. And if you want to send people in chaos and create a hostile environment, is attacking their economy. When I say war, I think there's a tariff war. Obviously, this is a tariff war that could degenerate into other things that we cannot anticipate. Our hope continues that we can solve this. We can halt and end this because we do believe that there are many Americans who want to see this relationship continue forward. There are many Canadians who want to see this relationship continue forward versus go into a panic tariff war that could lead into other things. This morning alone, some premiers of some provinces were talking about cutting electricity to multiple cities in America. And I don't imagine that's going to go well for Americans either. So um, it just feels very unjustified and unnecessary. And um, one person or one administration is making it very difficult for Americans and Canadians in this time. And the state of the world right now is quite chaotic, if you ask me. And you would want to keep all of your friends instead of creating more enemies. And we just don't understand why this is happening.
And this is going to be a learning opportunity for people not familiar with how
hmm
the Canadian government system works. Justin Trudeau is stepping down as prime minister, and there'll be elections in Canada when. And before you answer that, also explain how the tariffs might affect who gets elected.
The prime minister was not voted non-confidence. The prime minister didn't have the support of his caucus and had to step down. And so he, after 10 years of leading our team and being a vessel of some very progressive policies that have seen Canada to be in a really good shape to even play and on a world stage right now to for us to have the opportunities to look into new markets. I attribute that to a lot of the leadership of the prime minister. But now he stepped down, so he prorogued. What that means is that currently government is not sitting until March 4th. But on Sunday, March the 9th, we will be electing a new leader for the Liberal Party, which normally when you elect a leader, they go into an election and they get elected and become prime minister. But the reality of where we are right now, the new leader will immediately become the prime minister of Canada because the current prime minister will be stepping down and allowing him to lead. So after March 9th, everything is like it's up in the air, if I can say that, because we are hoping to be back in Parliament on March 24th. I'm unsure where things are going to go at that point. When we left in December, we had proposed our a budget. It's a smaller budget, like a fall statement. That hasn't passed. Could be up for a non-confidence vote. The throne speech for the new Prime Minister of Canada could also be up for a vote of non-confidence. So we don't know exactly what's going to happen on March 24th, or even after March 9th. The new prime minister could decide to send us into an election immediately so that it can have a clear mandate on how to guide Canada through this, unprecedented time. So a lot of we don't know if I can say that, and it's actually very interesting to be a leader in this time as well because we are navigating a lot of I don't knows. Almost feels like COVID, except we are now post-COVID and we've learned a lot of things from COVID, and we could use a lot of those tools to do better. The impact of the tariffs on our election, I think, is significant. In December, actually January 1st of 2025, the Liberal Party of Canada was behind by 25 points in the polls. Today, they're up. Not only are they up, the popularity of a potential minority government is higher than the opposition. The opposition has built their entire campaign on a axe to tax, and Canada's broken. And in a moment where Canadians are feeling very vulnerable and needing to be unified and wanting to show our strength in the world, we cannot trust anyone who believes that our country is broken and there's nothing good that comes out of our country. So I think Canadians are very much they're showing their strong voice on that because I tell you for the last 4+ more years we've been behind the polls and all of a sudden our polls have shifted. So I think it'll have a strong impact on elections. And let's not forget that Elon Musk and JD Vance and Trump all endorsed the multiple members of the opposition. And Canadians don't trust Trump right now. Canadians don't trust
So
anyone
this
who's interfering with their economy. And I think that's going to have a strong impact on our election.
So the endorsement might not actually help. People were not sure in Germany if JD Vance's and Trump's endorsement and Elon Musk's endorsement of the AFD actually had a positive effect. This is interesting that you would say in Canada it might not have a positive
It's
effect.
having the other effect.
So there's been a move to the right in Europe
Hmm.
and around the world because of these uncertain times. And that's just a tendency of people to, first of all, want easy answers and
Yeah.
for people to make them feel a little bit safer. It's interesting to hear from you that that is not necessarily the case in Canada.
It
The
was the case in Canada for the last number of years, and had we been in an election last year, the results would be very evident of the tendencies versus going into an election post-Trump. So I think personally, there are a couple of things that are changing the polls right now in the Canadian political landscape. First, the prime minister stepped down. There's been a very strong PR campaign anti Prime Minister Trudeau for a number of years, and it began to set into a lot of people's minds. I mean, you can talk to a 7-year-old and they can tell you they don't like Justin, and they don't know why they don't like Justin because it's the parody that you hear, online and the vitriol. Second, I think coming of the return of Trump in the era and then the way that return is shaping up is also shifting Canadian minds around how they want to go into the polls and how they want to go into an election. Third, I would say um, you again have an opposition party that isn't equipped to rise to the occasion. I mean, the leader of the Conservative Party has been an elected official, member of parliament since he was, I think, 21 or 24, something like that, or under 25, has never held any other job, doesn't necessarily have an economic background either. And he talks about Canada, needing a stronger economy. I don't think he understands what that means, including, some of the people he's surrounded with. You look at his finance critique, they're not the most equipped people to take Canada through this moment. And Canadians continue to give Prime Minister Trudeau the mandate during the COVID because he handled that very well and he had the right team to manage all of that. So, and we would be in a very different place had they not taken the decisions that they took. And then lastly, we have a new leader who was appointed by a conservative prime minister to govern the Bank of Canada during the 2008 recession, and including him also having the background of also being the Bank of Canada for the UK when they were going through what they were going through. So he's a trusted person. He is seen as someone who understands the economy and who can help us get through this time. So those four things I think have contributed in Canadians building the confidence to shift the polls and to reconsider supporting the Liberal Party of Canada. I wouldn't put it past the fact that Trump and Elon Musk endorsed the opposition MPs, um, including JD Vance being a past roommate to one of the members of parliament in Canada as well. So a lot of connections there. A lot of in the last three elections, the Conservative Party has really leaned into the whole MAGA movement. And it hasn't played very well with Canadians are very compassionate. I mean, I'm sure you know a lot about Canada. We're not perfect, but we have strong values around humanitarian rights, supporting people, caring about one another. I mean, we have healthcare that is accessible to all. We have child tax benefit that has uplifted thousands of children out of poverty. We believe in dental care. Currently, we passed a dental care, a national dental care, universal dental for everyone, and universal child care, where moms can don't have to pay a mortgage to put their kids in daycare and they can participate in our economy. So I would say we're a very progressive country with 63% of Canadian population being post-secondary educated. We have good conversations and to lie to Canadians that our country is broken in a time where we need more unity. I'm not a strong believer of protectionism because protectionism is what's leading into what the U.S. is doing, but I do believe in a good Canadian patriotic front when we are under attack or under threat.
Before we started the interview, you and I were talking about social media. Is there any indication in Canada that there is outside election influencing?
I don't think there's been any report, like any trusted report that you can read this on. But obviously, I think there will be at some point because you can tell certain machines that were very concentrated and focused on attacking him. And it wasn't just the outside or any, I would say also in Parliament, the way he was addressed. The Conservative Party over the last three elections have built their campaign on Justin Trudeau and Justin Trudeau alone. Because one, he's been the leader for the last decade. He is an effective campaigner. He has gone through some very tough times and has been able to rise above them. So I can understand. And he's taken out five conservative leaders. So obviously the campaign was drafted and planned towards him versus the Liberal Party of Canada. So it was always about Justin Trudeau. And we know this because we were also campaigning, and we can tell where you can test his name and not test his name. And then his family as well being also victims of that. Um, I think there should be a report and a research on how far, the extent of how far this PR campaign went and who was behind it. But anyone you can talk to in Canada can tell you that the campaign was against the Prime Minister for the last couple of years.
Canada has a huge amount of Ukrainian immigrants, and
Absolutely.
the United States is rethinking their generosity towards some of them with the green cards that they gave once the war began in Ukraine. Trudeau and Canada have reaffirmed their support of Ukraine.
The opposition has, tried to own this narrative and sort of pulling pages out of Trump's book in the way that they communicate certain things on our support for Ukraine and build a narrative around Canadians are struggling, so we shouldn't be helping anyone else. But Canadians have decades of support for others when they're going through whether it's a war, a climate emergency, or whatever else. We are always there for people, and it's part of our it's in the fabric of our values. Um, Currently, I think everyone watched the recent meeting between um, President Trump and Zelensky, and people are upset. People are upset at the clear breakdown of democracy. I mean, this is destroying democracy, and I think I think everybody's just surprised that we've let it go this far. But Canadians remain very, very united on our support to Ukraine and to Ukrainians. Many Ukrainians have come to Canada and are strong contributors in our economy, are living in our communities. Their children are in our schools, and they are now part of the Canadian family, and we stand with them.
I know that you have, with your connections, worked very closely with developing
Hmm.
ties between Canada and Africa. And I
Yeah.
know militarily through NATO, Canada's also, and through trainings. I believe it was Canada that was training actually the
Yes.
police in Kyiv. What can you tell us about that?
I'm careful to where I want to have this conversation because I mean we
Okay,
do
yeah.
have a new leader coming in on Sunday. But so I don't want to speak on behalf of the new leader, but currently our position has we contribute to the World Bank, to the Gavi, IDA. A lot of our international development funds goes to Africa and other parts of the world. We're not the United States of America, so we don't have USAID type of funding, but we do the best we can, and we're always there to support. Our position on continuing to support the training of Ukraine is still we're committed to continuing to doing that. In terms of NATO, the increase of the 2%, this current government hasn't done that, and it would be difficult to do now because we're prorogued and they can't go into Parliament and request for that to happen. We have to wait for the new incoming leader to make that decision. And so far, from what I've heard, all of them. Um, Actually, I don't want to say all of them. I think for two for sure that I'm aware are going to be increasing to 2% in NATO contribution and also strengthen our defense. And that would, I would hope that would go as far as, veterans and making sure that our veterans are well taken care of and they have homes and they're not homeless and something that we focused on as a government too, but we could push a little farther if we're going to be increasing our defense and making sure that there are mental health support systems and within our defense system and hire more people and hire competent people and put the resources that they need to be competent and to be able to represent us in the world stage. So these are all things that many Canadians, I mean, every Canadian I speak to lately who talks about defense and the increase of our defense participation in NATO, and as well as doing better at investing in defense here in Canada and pushing it a little further than we have in the past.
I've spoken with a lot of women, especially women leaders, that are talking about how their job is getting more challenging. Are you
Hmm.
noticing politically that there's also has there been a pushback? You had alluded to the fact that there are some parties that are really pushing this mega Canada type of motto. Are you feeling that as a political leader and politician?
So the report in Parliament, we did some studies on, the where things are with the elected officials and the threat on elected officials because their complaints were becoming more increasingly loud. And the report in Parliament was that since 2015, the threat on members of Parliament had gone up to 800%. That's a big number. Obviously, as a woman, so I actually call myself like a pandemic leader because I got elected for the first time in 2018, shortly before we went into the pandemic. So, and as being a young woman and a Black woman in a country where there's only 1.3 million of us out of 40 million people, I am part of the minority group. My gender also puts me in a minority group. I think just being a woman politician altogether is very difficult. It's not undoable, it's very difficult. But since the pandemic, there's been an increasing amount of misinformation, disinformation, fake news outlets that create this fake tension amongst our Canadian society. And that has repercussions, and the repercussions are that we are vulnerable to threats and to violence. I think between 2021 and 2023, there was multiple people who had arsons at their offices. And so the threat is very real. We can't take it for granted. I think part of readjusting how we do government and the increase of our defense, we have to talk about how we protect our leaders as well, because as the person who did the report in Parliament said, I gotta remember who that was, but he said, I think it's the Sergeant at Arms. He had said something about it's not about if something bad is going to happen, it's when, and are we going to wait to the when? Um, People have access to social media and they have access to our phone numbers, our emails, our offices, and sometimes they think they can say whatever they want behind those websites, but it gets real when they can show up at your office and make threats to your office staff and yourself, and or commit arsons, as we have seen in the past. So, and I'll say this, Carrie, there are women who have decided not to run again because of it. We have a colleague who said that just the vitriol and the attack and the harassment and the MP to MP harassment as well just got way too much for her, and she stepped aside. She will not no longer be seeking re-election. However, she has offered her time to work on getting Parliament to commit to a safer space for not just for women, but for every single member of Parliament, and that we should be able to do our job without, feeling the threats that hang upon us when we're doing our job.
What does someone need to know about the importance of global food security?
Do you know the numbers? The stats are very starking when there's a lot of people who are living in poverty and are hungry. We have real issues like the different crises that are happening around the world. There's what I think like what 7 acute crises right now, with the climate change threats as well, that are uprooting communities, women and children, sending them into camps. And then you have the United States of America cutting back on U.S. aid, which is something that people have relied on to provide food when people are displaced. I think we need to do better. I think we need to do better by starting at home, protecting our own food security, and then making sure that we can also be, the basket of other people who are in need. There are so many things that we are talking about, especially The tariff wars are obviously horrible, but there's always an opportunity when there's a crisis. And I think the opportunity here is to revise our trade borders in Canada, the province to province trade, strengthening our food security system here, protecting our farmers, making sure that the tariffs do not have a strong impact on our farmers. So there's a lot of farmers in my area, so I do get to chat with farmers a lot. And just the pandemic alone, the amount of farmers that is shut down, right? The war of Russia on Ukraine affected our fertilizer and affected our farmers by default. So these are all things that cause food insecurity. And then you have climate change and then you have crises. And we're no longer in a world where we can exist alone. We are in a, global community and we have to make sure that we're doing our part. And I think Europe and of course Canada and other countries that are in a better situation really need to step up and invest in supporting people, especially where there are this hunger causing migrations. We should be investing in there. So one of the things that I've talked about for our Canada Africa strategy is that we don't need to be sending. Sometimes we can send aid, but maybe perhaps we can provide the aid with training for agriculture, providing support for AI agriculture so that people can actually adapt to the new environment and be able to support themselves. I think many people would leave their country if they had the choice to stay. People are leaving because they have no choice. And I think we can do better at supporting people to stay where they are if there's no war than bringing them to another country or supporting them in a refugee camp. So our dollars could do the same thing it's been doing, but differently. And this is just a policy change. And I think the more we talk about, like you think about Africa, Africa is the youngest continent in the world and the fastest growing. In the next 50 years, there'll be the largest population of the world. And countries like Senegal, Chad, and others where population is, 60% of the population is under 25. That's a problem, and that's a threat in itself. And if there are no jobs, no education on the other side, and nothing keeping people to be able to stay in their own country, it's going to be very difficult for all of us. So why don't we get ahead of it? And why is the United States of America pulling back now? And what can be done from the European Council and, Canada to fill in that void and that gap that the US is creating right now, which is going to be a huge problem. Currently in Congo, there's apparently an unnamed, unknown virus killing people
Yeah.
just days after US aid has been pulled. That makes all of us vulnerable because we're a global community now. I'm sure we have Canadians coming home even now from Congo, and what is the impact of that? And are we potentially facing another pandemic? And it's almost like somebody's pulling out instead of putting in more resources, we're pulling out and creating a huge gap that is going to make all of us very, very, very vulnerable. So, what we can do is continue to talk about it and connect with like-minded people and make sure that we are present when people need the support.
Thank you very, very much for your time.
I appreciate you and appreciate you doing this post Munich. I would have loved to be there because I can imagine I was watching online and I could imagine like some of the conversation, what they were driving out of people. And I was sort of like messaging on my phone and watching live, but I really appreciate you taking the time to connect with me post this. I enjoyed watching some of your TikToks and I'm happy to be a guest.